Welcome aboard, everybody. My name is Dubious. Thank you for your patience. Just tech difficulties, you know. That's the indie grind, if there's ever been the indie grind. Yeah, what we're going to be doing today, this is an offshoot of my mix show. So every week I do a mix show covering independent hip-hop across the country. I try to play as many independent artists from as many different scenes as I can and just try to kind of spread the spotlight, maybe get people's fan bases kind of crisscrossing a little bit so that people are hearing music that they haven't heard before and might be interested in. Because there's so much dope music comes out every week that it's like tough to keep up with. So I choose the best kind of 15, 20 tracks and play them every week. You can find that over on mixcloud.com/dubious. The archives are up over there. And yeah, today I have, for the Fly in Formation interview series, this is interview number 21, actually, and I'm today talking to C, who is, I believe, based in Toronto right now, but I know he is originally from Australia and has been based in Canada long enough that he assures me that, you know, it is Canadian content when I play it on @sick every week. So, you know, happy to have C aboard. And yeah, C, I gotta say, you're one of 3 artists named C in Canada who I'm aware of right now. All of y'all making hip hop music. One of them is he's in a group called Drunken Arseholes out on the East Coast with DJ Moves, and I think he differentiates it by putting like 6 exclamation points after C. That's him. Yeah, that's Drunken Arseholes C. I don't know the guy, but I know of him, and you know, I've talked to DJ Moves and stuff, so he's on the radar. And then there's another dude based in Edmonton too, so shouts to those C's. But today we're talking to C from the Movement fam. Yeah, man, so thanks for joining. Right since I started up after The Smoke Is Clear, you were one of the first artists I really kind of started connecting with and was sending music over and stuff, so I appreciate you a lot, man. I guess just, can you introduce yourself, let people know what you've been up to?
Editor Dubious's note, C was muted here, my bad. He was talking about how important DJs are.
Does really mean a lot, and I feel like what you do is underappreciated in the game because it's real, like, you know, we talk indie grind, grassroots level shit. It's much appreciated. I don't know if enough people thank you and all colleagues like you guys who spin stuff. So thank you for everything you do for hip hop. And I know you're an artist too, so you get it on both sides.
Appreciate it, man. It's that's the reward, honestly, is hearing that type of feedback from my peers. That's as good as it gets from from this promoting hip hop.
Yeah, I guess that's what we all, you know. It's all a like you said, fully independent grind for everybody. There isn't basically any money for the vast majority of artists, right? We're all doing this for the love.
Totally.
Trying to get money.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe eventually, you know, here and there. But yeah, so choosing the name C was probably unfortunate. Now you mentioned that. I feel like it's the least SEO friendly fucking name of all time. But I had it since my name was Craig, so I had C. It used to be C4, which is my social handles. And then I thought that was kind of weak, and I just got rid of that and just kept it to C, which I much preferred. Not really thinking about, you know, this new world. This was
Google algorithms and stuff. Now everybody's like replacing vowels with X's and, you know, chopping vowels out of their names so that you can find them on a Google search or whatever.
That would have been much smarter. Make like CXX or some bullshit. But yeah, it would have been. You know, I guess different times it was. I've been doing this for a fair while. So you were correct. I'm from Melbourne, Australia. My brother Notion and I moved to Toronto in 2010. So I've been here for 12 years. I believe my music became CanCon when I got PR. So that means so that was 2017. So I can definitely, I'm pretty sure at least, although all the music was produced and engineered and everything written by Canadians, so I guess it still makes it.
I think as long as one collaborator on it, whether it's an engineer or producer or whoever, I think as long as you can give a Canadian credit on there, although I might be lying about that. That's my understanding of it, though. So
I think you might be right. I think there's a percentage that it has to be. Maybe it's 50.
That sounds right. Yeah, it might be some percentage. Yeah.
Well, literally, to put it in context, the day I got was August 14th, 2017. I remember it very vividly because I've had a bit of a nightmare immigration story. But I got approved. You know, they tell you, they give you the certificate and all that stuff, and you know, you apply for the PR card. I went home and I applied for Factor and set that up, and I applied for SOCAN immediately because those the 2 things were most important to me that I wanted to do in music that I couldn't do. And all my stuff was with APRA in Australia still, which was just kind of an annoying administrative thing that made it more complicated. So to move everything over here was great. And then to be eligible for grants, and I finally got one a couple of years ago, was beautiful. So yeah, so we moved, my brother and I, we've been doing hip hop a long time. I'd say I started releasing music in 2002. So it's been 20 years, which is pretty crazy. I guess you can tell by the gray hairs. I know hip hop is, people always say it's a young man's game, but I wholeheartedly disagree.
No. Actually, that's about the same time I started releasing music out of my backpack kind of deal.
Okay, so you know the vibes.
Yeah, we've been around, man.
Okay, so much respect, because there's not many of us have been around that long, at least, in some shape or form, whether it's like just doing it out of your bedroom and throwing it, in 2002, as you know, like, what do you do when you record music? Like,
yeah, it's a lot tougher to get it out. Yeah, I was walking around, West Edmonton Mall trying to hand hand-to-hand mixtapes to people back in the day before there was the whole internet grind for it, right? That was the hustle. But
it was.
Yeah, man. I mean, I know that you're big on like promotion, and you've been putting yourself out in a lot of different kind of lanes. Like, you also, aside from the music, you're podcasting. You're sitting in front of the BAOS sign there. That's your beer podcast, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, indeed.
Dope. And then you've got another podcast, like you said, with Notion, your brother, who is a dope producer. If people don't know, they should check out Notion's work. And yeah, man, I mean, it's all that grind to try to get the name out, right? But how many podcasts do you actually have going right now? Is it just those two, or? Just
the two.
Okay.
So we have the BAOS, which is the set I'm on now. So it's called Beer and Other Shit, which is just a craft beer podcast I started in 2015, which was one of the first in Canada, because it's a pretty niche, topic matter.
Yeah.
There wasn't much else. I started this beer thing when I first moved to Canada. It was 2011, and they did this thing called 365 Days of Beer. When I say they, it was my friends in Australia, and all you had to do was they started a Facebook group. You had to take a picture of your selfie holding a labeled beer glass, can, or bottle, and then put it in this group or put it somewhere and number it, and you had to get to 365. And I'm like, well, there's not 365 beers, obviously, so this would be a stupid fun thing, and I get to try a bunch of beers and get drunk through my first winter.
Yeah.
So we did it. I hit 365 in like 7 months, and then just kept doing it. So I'm almost at 7,500 now.
Oh,
and I just kept doing. Then we started a podcast for it,
so
and the podcast
craft brew from around the world, right?
Like, yeah, all around the world. Yeah. Mostly Canada and the States, but I've only traveled since I've been doing it. I guess I've only been to Canada, the States, and Australia, and Jamaica, I guess, but they don't really have. Well, they had some beers though. But everywhere else, I haven't been back to Europe since. But you get a bunch of stuff over here that I can review. So that became a life of its own, and I did that because the music is stressful. Music was the main thing I'd been really like focusing on up till then. So it was cool to have like a side project, and then of course that side project became serious, which was not the intention at all. So like my song, I have a song called Brewheads, which I did in 2013, which if I'm not mistaken, is the first ever like craft beer song. There's obviously lots of drinking songs in there, Get Drunk, but actual like nerdy
listing
talking
off
about
craft beers and stuff.
Yeah, the beer, the ingredients, and home brewing and all this kind of crap. So I'm pretty sure it is. I claim it as that because I couldn't find anything else, and I imagine it would be not that difficult to find.
I'm unaware of any craft brewing songs, so yeah, I think
there has been some since, to be fair, and I've met some other people, other rappers in the States and stuff who do some great stuff in craft beer, and we've like worked together and things, which is dope. But
nice.
Pre 2013, I don't think so. So that song is the theme song. It's called Brewheads. It's a theme song to the podcast. I have the other podcast with my brother Notion, who's an MC, producer, and engineer, and my girlfriend's cousin Dan from the UK. But he's like 24, so he's a kid, and he's kind of like represents the new age, the new era. Sure. And it's cool to have him as the third. He's moved over here where he works in my company, and he's super open-minded for a young kid, and it's cool just to have his different take, because me and Notion are kind of older.
You need those open-minded younger guys hanging out with open-minded old heads too, right?
Could not agree more.
To keep the old heads from getting to be the crusty old heads who just hate everything, right? So yeah, I agree, man. I've been actually working with some younger artists recently. Like I had a guy who was 21 in here recording yesterday, and like it's a fresh perspective having somebody who's more tapped into, you know, new music or whatever. I mean, I pay a ton of attention to new music, but I guess maybe the new style of hip hop is what I could say. But
no, I agree.
Yeah,
I think it's really important, man, to have that. So he's on. That's just like a hip hop podcast, and we just sort of shoot the shit. We occasionally have guests, but not really. Sort of just, we've done it a few times. And then the other main project I have, we have, my partner and girlfriend and I have a social media agency, and that would mean that's our main thing that we're doing as well. So all of that, but obviously knowing how to use social media. I've been doing it since 2007, so I guess 15 years. Fuck, man, makes you feel old. But I've been doing it a long time.
Experience. That's what it should make you feel,
right?
Yeah, hell yeah.
There you go. So use all of that knowledge. Everything interplays. Like, obviously the music goes in with the podcasts, and High Season allows us, the knowledge to, to promote everything properly and sort of to build some connections through there, which have been valuable. So.
I was looking at your social media presence and kind of, over the years I've been paying attention. Like, would you say your heart is more in the music, or at this point have you found that podcasting is another way to express yourself that you feel passionate about that way? Like, is it more of kind of side hustle to try to push people towards the music from the podcasts, or is it just because podcasts are dope and you like talking?
Probably the former. Now, I feel like the music gets the least attention in my life, which I'm not stoked about. But it's as you sort of get older and shit happens, and it's more like, well, the music always got some traction, but like it wasn't on track for being livelihood at any point yet.
Right.
I mean, 2013, 2014, we were touring heavy, we were like going pretty hard, but I realized that touring doesn't really change anything. Like, I feel like some people might go and they're obsessed with touring. I'm like, what are you really getting out of this? If most of the time you're barely breaking even or losing money.
Right.
You're
having fun. Man, I tell artists that all the time. Like, I did a bunch of shows through my 20s, and like you say, you can run around and do bar gigs, and it kind of gets your name in front of some people or whatever. Or like opening for different artists when they come through town. That's a great way to get out in front of more of an audience. But at the same time, I feel like it's 2022. We got all this access online, and you can just kind of go global in a very real way that you couldn't, 15 years ago, like we were saying.
Yes.
So
it's changed, man. Yeah, the pods have become a real thing. It wasn't intentional, but I've always been probably like you, like you have a radio show and this longer form thing. So you like talking, I like talking. I feel like I'm pretty good at it. The interview, the beer stuff did surprisingly well, to the point where we were getting paid some pretty serious money from breweries, from tourism offices. Like, we worked with tourism that were sending us to, like, what was it called? Visit Colorado, Tourism Vermont, Visit Virginia.
Like to beer fests and stuff like that, or whatever.
Yeah, they'd bring you over to go to beer festivals, but then they'd set you up with like podcasts and interviews and vlog, and we're just doing content, and we're doing that whilst we're running the agency, which is quite stressful and stuff. I mean, this was all pre-2020.
Yeah.
But it was like, when you kind of almost got to follow where the traction takes you, right? But what I've found is that as the beer thing has continued to grow, a lot of those people have come across to the music, and they're some of the biggest supporters of my music now.
Right.
So I'm like, it all interconnects, and that's why I don't think I'll ever give up on the music, because I do love it too much. I kind of wish I didn't. I don't know how you feel about that, but sometimes it's so fucking annoying that I wish I could just be like done with it.
As you were setting up your camera, I actually wrote that question down because I was listening to some of your bars on Cross the Line there. As we were setting up, I was playing some of your new songs from the re-release of Relentless, which we'll get to talking about here. But in the second verse of that, you kind of talk about some real shit that kind of struck me as like, oh, this is extra reality raps right now. Like, he's talking about bringing the crew over to try to chase the dream. And then earlier when you said like that one of the first things you did when you got citizenship was go sign up for SoCan and make sure, you were in position to actually be putting music out to the world. That shows it must be real high on the priority list, right? And it kind of like, so I can also tell that you prioritize promotion a lot. Like you said, you've been in the social media world hustling and trying to get out to more people for a long time now. So I often find artists have a tough time walking that line and doing both of those things at the same time. you know, concentrating on music, where you hear a lot of artists say like, oh, I don't have time for all that social media promotion bullshit, or you know, artists who you check their social media and there's nothing there, or you know, you can't even find them on social media, that kind of stuff. So I kind of wanted to ask, like, is it something you could ever give up? Like you kind of answered it already, and I would agree that, man, like it's art. Who stops making art? Anybody who likes making art, they're not going to stop, likely.
No matter the pressure. I feel like music is almost, you know, you're in a, this is actually a really good conversation for people like you and I who have been doing it so long. Like, I imagine you would feel, there's an element of feeling jaded with, I don't know about in Alberta back in the day, or in Edmonton, but in Australia, growing up as white dudes in the suburbs, right? Obviously, we are not of the culture. We are guests, and we're highly aware of that, right?
Definitely.
And we move accordingly. It wasn't cool to rap or to listen to hip hop growing up. I got bullied specifically for it, but I wore it on my sleeve, literally. You know, you go to a show, I'm wearing a t-shirt, people try and fight me at school and stuff over it.
Hell yeah.
Because they, you know, didn't understand it. And, you know, I am so, and I don't know what this is kind of a statement as well as like an answer as well as a kind of a question back to you, but like I felt very protective of hip hop because I wouldn't say like I suffered for it, but you know, it wasn't easy being a rap fan, and I never wavered in my passion or dedication to hip hop music, to the point where I tried all of the different elements. I couldn't graph, I never could dance. I tried DJing and just didn't have my own equipment. So rapping, I was a hip hop journalist back in the day too.
Right.
So I kind of just gravitated towards words, and it made sense for me, and I felt like I was best at that part of the art form. So I followed it, and there was a small, it felt like this, like, hey man, we've discovered something, like this bunch of people that, you know, in the scene in Melbourne, like I still talk to these dudes to this day, the people we came up with, because most of them are still rapping too, and I love that. And they're still releasing music. Some of them, one of our good friends is like 6 times platinum and dominating, and then the rest of us are just putting shit out, and we're continuing to do it, and we talk with him like nothing changed, and I love that. So it's sort of like now it's become global, which is also a beautiful thing. But it's become saturated, and it feels to me like almost impossible to stand out these days unless you do something ridiculous.
It's really tough to be taken seriously, man. I feel like
very much.
If you ask the average person on the street who isn't really connected to the hip hop culture, like, hey, impersonate a rapper for me, they're gonna do some clown shit, right? They're gonna stand there and it's gonna be embarrassing.
Yes.
And I don't think other genres really experience that type of I don't know, because the mainstream of hip hop is kind of so different fundamentally than what a lot of the underground is, or than what a lot of the culture tends to actually be. You know, I think people get that idea from just the surface level mainstream stuff, that like, okay, well, you're a local rapper, like what are you gonna pretend to have a big chain, like you're gonna you know, like rap about AKs or whatever? Like, well, I mean, no, probably not. but yeah,
you can drop relatable shit to the average person, and it doesn't mean it's whack.
Rhyme. Exactly.
Do you ever see those man, I'm super, like, I feel like I'm very sensitive to whenever people mock what you talk about when you said doing some clown shit, mocking the art, like hip hop and the culture. I detest it. Like, I hate.
Dude, you are one of the few people I've ever heard that I can relate to on that shit. I mean, like Lonely Island or some shit like that, when they first came out and were doing On a Boat.
I was like, what are you doing? I know it's funny and it's ridiculous. It's not even that. That kind of can kind of, Little Dicky or something like that, but I'm talking like a TV show, and they'll have someone out and they'll just start rapping, and they'll do the hat to the side, and they still do that. And they do the rap hands.
There's the show Superstore or whatever, the one where they're like all working at Walmart or whatever. There's a character on that show who's like, you know, the washed up trailer park rapper guy or whatever, that's the entire joke. Like season after season, that's this guy's joke, is like, he's a white guy who wants to rap. That's the joke, and like, it's so much. We're gonna draw laughs from it, I guess. But
they're clowning the culture. Check this though. This is funnily enough, at like 2 a.m. Saturday night, my girl and I were like, pretty lit, and we were just having a conversation. We were like, everything today is content. you mentioned before, and the reason I thought of this was because you mentioned that the mainstream surface level stuff. So like, I feel like that is like outweighing the underground stuff. I think at this point, everyone's trying to be that. Everyone's trying to have the green hair and the dreads and the face tats and the fucking turn up shit that's saying nothing, and they're all saying the same thing. It feels like it's almost become cool to not put any effort into the music. Bars really aren't valued. Message isn't valued. Everything kind of sounds the same. It's all about like what you have. Like, do you have this Balenciaga bag or this car or whatever it might be? So like, just as fleeting as posting a reel on Instagram is, where it's just something stupid where you're doing a trend or whatever, so is the music. So the music, often you could extend that even to TV shows and almost any type of content. Everything has become content. So we don't even give much new music an effort to even listen to it, because there's too much of it. Everything's so saturated. Everything's easy to access, and we don't even know who's serious or not. Like, a lot of people think hip hop or music is a pathway to money, to chicks, to whatever it might be, to get things to feel status.
Easier ways to make money.
It didn't used to be that way.
Yeah.
Bro.
I'll tell you that.
Genuinely.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like do you feel that? Because you would listen to almost more new music than the average person based on what you do.
I sift through so much music every week. I'm listening to probably about 5 hours worth of music that comes out from independent artists across the country, and whittling that down to the hour that I want to play for people, kind of thing. So,
is that hard?
Oh man, it sometimes it hurts the ears. You know, like I'll be listening to it with like on a work site with people or whatever. You know, I paint houses through the day, and so like sometimes, you know, I'm listening to it and we're just like clowning what's being made, because like you said, man, a lot of people are trying to do that cookie cutter. Okay, well, I see the mainstream being successful doing this, so what I want to do is emulate it as closely as possible. But like, I tell people that, like, yo, if somebody wants to listen to somebody rap about bricks of cocaine, they're gonna go listen to Pusha T. They're gonna go listen to, you know, the guys who do it best and who actually came out of those stories. You know, I mean, like, that's a real story for some people. And they're not going to go looking for the imitator guy from Lethbridge who wants to rap like that. You know what I mean? Like, people just 100%. Hear that and it gets clowned. Yeah, it's corny.
And it should get clowned.
Yeah.
It's like, I just feel like if you've got a message and you're saying things that are real and you're talking about your real life or whatever it might be, it's like that for the most part, that gets passed over now. And it's like, before, I almost feel like it was easier to target people, because you're like, all right, if you're a fan of Kweli, Most, Roots, Common, Dead Prez, for example, not that our music is exactly like that, but that's like how I would in my head categorize ourselves to a degree, because
it's the influences that got you where you're at, I'd say.
Totally, but it's that would be, I guess so, yes. And I don't know where else to place it, because I feel like we have a message in all of everything's always positive, and not corny positive, but everything's not like, we don't talk about things that we don't experience, violence or guns and blah blah blah, like, you know, aspirational sometimes, but whatever. So I'm like, I don't know where to even place it. But before, it was like, oh, if you like these guys, you'll like this, but how do you even get it in people's ears now? Or because playlists are all bought, like all the labels own Spotify, so to get on Spotify editorial, you either got to be on a label, or you've got to be find the publicist who'll get you on there, and then pay them the 10 or 20 grand a month if they'll even accept you as a client to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like everything is completely rigged, so all you can do is just keep doing stuff and keep trying to put things out and
and that's what's led us to like you were saying, there's this flood of content every week.
Yes, that was literally what I was about to say. Content.
Tough to be.
To put stuff out.
It's tough to stand out from it, to differentiate yourself from it, and you see people doing the drop every week, like you have been leading up over this past month to the re-release of Relentless, and you see people with, you know, 20 singles through the course of a year or whatever. Like, there are some people that are just dropping music all the time, constantly. Album here, album there, EP, just and I mean, these are just the guys I'm following or whatever. There's Canadian artists who are putting out content constantly. So I did want to ask, like, in this type of environment, you're obviously very aware of it. You're kind of a rarity in somebody who's actually going to put effort into promoting an album for longer than a couple weeks, or maybe a tour cycle, right? You see guys drop their album and then they'll run around and do tours and book shows across the country based off of it. But then it's kind of like, and here's the next album, like a month or two after that. So I did want to ask, like, what brought you back to Relentless, and the 5 new tracks that are going to be added on it, which thanks for sending those over. They're dope. I've played a couple of them already on AtSick. But were those coming together during the original recording process, or have those been put together since? Or just tell us a little bit about Relentless and how that project stands now.
Definitely. So that album, we started it in, is pretty crazy, but particularly given the context of what you just said, we started in maybe 2015. We did like 1 song, 2 songs maybe. Then I had 2 other projects, so I was like, all right, let me put this on hold for a bit. I had an EP that I dropped that year called Be Better with a producer in the UK. Then I had an album with my friend Poe in Oakland, and that was called Bad Habits, which is what the podcast was named after. And that ended up not dropping till 2018. So I finished those 2 albums, then we went back to Relentless. So we made most of it in 2016 and 17. Okay. Recorded it with the first time the album and the project I spent the most money on. We recorded it. We booked a studio in Toronto. Like, I got a studio just to my right here, but we had musicians and guest vocalists. So we booked a studio with a friend in Toronto in 2017, and we had a full week, like 12-hour days. Never done this before. All the songs were basically done. We just had to record everything and tweak stuff, and so it was a lot of fun. So we did record all 17 songs in that 1 week, and then we had one sort of fill-in day not long after that. And then the problem was finances, really. I wanted to put it out, and I wanted to spend money on music videos. I wanted to spend money on promotion that I did not have at the time. Then I managed to land the Factor, and also my brother Notion, who was mixing it. He does it for me for a favor. Him and I have the label The Movement Fam together, which is really just us, but there have been other artists in the past. So like part of the deal is like he'll mix the master and I do all the other stuff.
Label's called The Movement Fam, right?
Yes, label's called The Movement Fam. We've had that since like 2008, which is really just him and I, and my girlfriend's part of it too, I guess. She like helps. But so everything was recorded at once. We sat on it. I wanted to drop it. It's like every year I wanted to do it, but it took him a long time to do it because the sessions were just recorded, and it was like the engineer just kind of like press record and kind of looped it. So there might have been like 10 takes of the same thing. So then and that's for everything: drums, synth, bass, blah, 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 like every single part of the beat. So like, and then the vocals. So I did each vocal like 7 times, and then the backups and everything. And then they're like, cool. So they had to go through every single part. You can imagine how long that took. Yeah. Whilst, he's working his jobs and he's getting paid clients for production and for mixing too. So he had to fit it in, which was very difficult for him to do that. So it just took much longer. I got a grant from Factor. It was only the, what's the other one called? I'm a Factor judge. I should know the name of it. It's called the first one, the $2,000 grant. So it wasn't much, but I spent that mostly on the videos. Okay. So we had all those, and the idea was to drop Relentless. So my girlfriend was like, it has to be short. You can't just go put everything out. I wanted everything on there, but she was like, all right, try and get it to 10 songs. I was like, I got it to 12. And I was like, when you put these other 5 out on the Deluxe. So I wanted to do the Deluxe a matter of months later. Okay. But my artist, essentially, my designer, he moved from Toronto to BC, and his life completely changed. So he took forever to do the stuff. Shouts to Joe, he's the man, but I know he was super busy.
Life happens, man.
Life happens, bro.
Yeah, that's why it's so tough to get music out as an independent artist, because there's a lot of moving parts and relying on a lot of different people who all have to back burner the art when life happens is pretty much how it comes down to. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. And like, I work with the same crew of people. I've worked with Josh since 2011, and he's one of my close friends. And he doesn't, like, I don't pay him. He won't take money for it. He wants this creative outlet. I've got a few people like that I work with exclusively. My guy Richie, who does a lot of videos. Never paid him. He said he makes a living off doing videos. He's like, I just want to do it. He's got his other friends, this indie rock band, who I know them. They used to live next door to me in Montreal. He does it for them too, because they're his friends. Right. So he wanted to do that. I've always asked him every time, are you sure? Are you good? So when you don't pay somebody, and people are doing it for you on the strength, this can happen, and it's obviously I'm happy to pay. That's why I continue to offer. But I have these deep relationships with these creative partners that I'm not super interested in working with anybody else. So I would kind of rather.
And if you can save money and work with people you know and trust and have created product you like in the past with, then why not continue with it?
And it's a breeze when you know, man, like when you find someone you know and trust, whether it's a producer, engineer, photographer, designer, video person, you're like, it's immediate. There's so much unsaid that you just like, oh, I'm like, he knows. Like he's given me videos that were edited. I'm like, cool, not a single change. A couple times before. So yeah, everything just took forever, to be honest. So the album has the original 12. It's a Relentless Deluxe. So it's I guess it's a re-release, but it's the deluxe version, which just has the 5 bonus tracks. And I did them. I wanted to do, as you mentioned before, each Friday of October, because it dropped October 22nd, 2021, was the original album. I had a couple singles. I think I had 3 singles before that were all videos. And now these I want to just, hack the Spotify algorithm a little bit and pop that out. But the label, I'm with this label, and we talked about it off air. This is kind of more context for people who haven't worked with them before.
So when you say label, because before you said distributor, so are we talking about like basically like CD Baby or DistroKid or whatever the other ones are, the AWOL, whatever.
Yeah, so TuneCore. I used to be with TuneCore, and I got into, so there's one called AWOL. It stands for Artists Without a Label. So they are a label, but then they're a distributor for independent artists via application. There's other ones called like STEM that you have to apply to, and there's another one I've heard of as well. So I applied for AWOL like 4 years ago, and got in. To my surprise, when I've had friends who have done significantly more than me in music who would decline. So I don't know what happened. I think I might have just got in early. So I didn't move all my music over because it seemed to be annoying. But in 2020, I finally did it, and it was a whole ordeal to move it from TuneCore to AWOL, because TuneCore would I just didn't enjoy dealing with them. But essentially, they're a distributor and aggregator. They have relationships with all the platforms. So you pop the music on, you pay or whatever it is, and then they shoot it up, right? Same as like you described the CD Baby.
Right.
But AWOL, they take, I think, 15%, but then they're supposed to help you with other things. Okay. So when, unfortunately for me, for my timing, they changed their back end in like the beginning of October. So I'd already scheduled all the singles before that change went through. But the way that it works, and this is more, I don't know how, I imagine that probably a lot of artists would.
This is honestly a podcast for artists, I think. Like
perfect.
From the 3 years of doing AtSick, I've decided kind of that the only people paying any attention to music in Canada are musicians themselves. Pretty much everybody else is happy to listen to Taylor Swift, it seems like. So yeah, I mean, crack it wide open, man.
Okay, beautiful. Because this is the reason I asked was that this is the type of information I would like to hear artists talk about. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I love it when people get like down and dirty about the business. So if you're going to release music, right, every song has an ISRC code. And basically that is the actual code that I had, that code, and that carried across from TuneCore to AWOL. So it's the same amount of plays that it racked up on TuneCore, carried across all of those songs to AWOL. So everything's based on that original code. Right. So when you do, you've got the bucket of Relentless, the 12 songs, and then I've got Relentless Deluxe, which has those same 12 songs plus 5 new ones. So you got to move it, you got to re-release it. And you got 2 options. You can choose existing songs, which basically essentially just selects those ISRC codes, and you can put them in whatever order you want. And then you can upload the waves and fill out all the metadata for those 5 new songs. So I did that, new cover art and everything. It says Relentless Deluxe because AWOL is super anal. They won't let you, like TuneCore, you could get away with shit. Right. AWOL, you can't get away with anything, which is really annoying because they follow iTunes regulations. So you look at Kendrick, any artist you see that's like all caps, where a lot of artists do that, that's against iTunes rules. So all of the distributors won't let you do it. So like Cross the Line is capital C cross, lowercase t the, capital L line. I hate that. I'm a OCD ex-journalist writer type of dude. I want that T capitalized, but they fucking won't do it.
Yeah,
it kills me, bro. It drives me crazy. So basically I did that, submitted it, and I wanted, but it got sort of caught up in the new system, so I had to submit it through the new backend.
Do you think that that's mostly a problem with iTunes being a pain in the ass willfully? Because like I notice even when I'm searching to buy music on iTunes, like if you don't capitalize something that's supposed to be capitalized, if you like miss an apostrophe on like if a song is called like, you know,
like don't
Mama's Boy, like, and you don't put the apostrophe S on Mama's, it doesn't pop up even though you've spelt the artist name right and everything. Like they have a really particular search algorithm over there is what I've noticed just buying music every week for AtSick. So I wonder how much that plays into it. And also I wonder if iTunes is doing it specifically just to kind of fuck people over because they are such an industry giant, you know?
Yeah. Interesting. That's a really good point. It's probably a part of it. I guess it's all tied in. So they have, excuse me, their rules and then for search, and then they apply that to all the distributors. So because like if you're an independent artist, you're just a number and a check to these guys, and they obviously know that they need volume of independent artists to make any money from it, because they're only making their money from a very probably 0.1% of the people they work with.
30,000 new songs on Spotify every day, man. I
mean, that's insane, right? So they don't really give a shit. So basically, there's this thing called a P line and a C line, and that's it when it says copyright 2022, the Movement Fam or whatever, right?
Yeah.
When I put it through, I put 2021 for those first 12 songs, 2022 for the last 5 songs, and the whole project copyright 2022, which is accurate. It took a week, and then they rejected it and said that they don't match. And I was like, I was Googling it, I went through their help thing, couldn't find any information, so I changed it all to 2021 just to shut it up. Submitted that. Waited a week again, and then it got declined again for the same reason. So I've been in touch with one of the dudes from AWOL right now, because I had to connect with a manager who I know who was managing this girl who was signed directly to AWOL. So he connected me, so I had this little plug, and then this guy connected me to like the VP of community, like the help people. So he's been helping me, but they're not moving it through. So I emailed him again today to see if he could do it, because I wanted to drop this Friday. I don't know when it's going to drop, because it doesn't matter what I do, it's going to keep getting rejected. It takes a week to reject me, and they're not giving me any further information. It's like a copy-paste response. So I feel kind of helpless. This is the first time I've ever missed. I'm very like, if I say it, I'm going to do it. Like, it's very important.
Well, it's annoying when you're actually putting effort in for marketing, and you've got multiple platforms, and you're spreading the message, hey, everybody pay attention, this is coming, and then the ball
you look
drops.
Like an idiot, right?
Well,
luckily I didn't overkill it, because I have been super busy, and I feel like I'm not as on point with social as I kind of should be. I was promoting all the songs, obviously, but I'm not devastated about it, because it's pretty like, just fucking put it out, man. Like, I did everything I should have done. I did everything correctly, and I'm just like, they're not helping me get it over the line, which is that, once again, coming back to the independent grind. It's just always like, I always see the major artists always complain about labels, so maybe it's the same shit, but at least you've got someone you can call. Like, right. I don't have...
At least there's a rep there. And, and the label has enough sway, probably, that they can, you know, talk to people a little bit easier than you can. You know, they have a little bit more...
Yeah, because they know the people either at all of the different distributors,
exactly,
or the DSPs. Sorry, but you know how you always see like Drake or DJ Khaled being like, "It drops at midnight. We're in the studio finishing the last song now." That's not a reality for 99.9999% of artists. Like, that's only for the big major people can do it. They submit it, and then boom, it's out across all platforms. For us, we have to be 4 weeks. So I did all of that. I did everything they wanted me to do, and they still fucked me. And I could have had a publicist. I could have had all this money behind it. Their help section weren't responding to me. I wouldn't even get the emails back, as in it wasn't even hitting in the system.
Right.
So I'm like, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong with this project. But the first 3 singles came out just fine, and then I've got them on a few playlists, and it's, you know.
So what's the play for the next one? Are you gonna try one on a different distributor then, or?
Do you know what? It's highly likely I won't, because I want to keep everything together. And the problem is, as soon as you move to another distributor, then you got to deal with multiple places to keep track of any income. Right. Not that there's a ton, but I don't like the idea of it being split up. I think consolidation is definitely the easiest way to manage a catalog.
Yeah.
So the next thing is like, I'll probably do it, hopefully, with even more. Like, I've got an EP done. It's mixed and mastered, basically. Now we're just getting the cover done. that I wanted to drop before the end of the year, because I did a project. I don't know if you remember. I sent it to you in 2020. It was called By Toxic City.
Yeah,
and it was
I played that album on Attic for sure, man. I was gonna say, it's funny that you were working on Relentless since 2015, because that wasn't the first album I heard from you. That's for sure. I think By Toxic City was.
Okay, interesting. So Relentless came out after By Toxic City, though.
Yeah,
but it started before everything, even since I started Relentless, I'd released like 3 projects whilst that was still being done. So I sort of was very prolific a little while ago, and I've kind of been a little slower recently because I had so much shit like banked up, and it didn't seem, in my opinion, it hasn't really aged. And when you guys hear it, it won't feel like it's aged. Like, to me, you know what it's like? Anything you do last week is old shit to you.
Well, and any artist who doesn't have a vault full of songs that they haven't released, I mean, they got to work harder.
Right? That's it, right? Or they want to make it like they want to do content and they want to do a song every week or some bullshit like Russ, who's different, because Russ is a beast and he seems to be just pumping it out, and it's, it's not all hits, but he does pretty well.
It's possible, but even a lot of the time when you hear guys doing that song by song, I feel like they've probably spent a year recording and now they're going to drop all those songs or whatever. I mean, maybe not Russ. I don't really know personally.
He's probably doing it, I think he's an exception to the rule, but I think you're 100% right that people do bank it up. That's what I did. So we had By Toxic City 2 done by not long after the first one. The first one dropped in 2020, probably October, November, I think. And then we started it straight away, or we started even the second one before we even released the first one. And we just sort of like, I had a crazy times with, we moved and bought a house, and my whole life has completely changed, and was busy with the agency and the podcast and stuff. So I was more focused on Relentless. I didn't really care, let it go. So now that one is done. It's been done. So I want to drop that before the end of the year. So hopefully if we can. Now I'm kind of worried, like, can I? What if they don't approve some shit? But the good thing is there won't be any conflicting P&C line stuff, because it's all brand new. Yeah. So it's fine. And then we're going to work on Volume 3. He's just been slowly sending me beats, and Notion and I are doing the group project. So we've been going through beats for that. But yeah, so hopefully Relentless will come out this month. I'm hoping like it could be this week. I don't know how quick they can push it through.
So
it's just a matter of hearing from the dude. I emailed him today, then I get an out of office fucking thing. And it said out of office till September 19th. So I'm like, is that a mistake? You mean November 19th? So that means you're going for like damn near 3 weeks. So that means it won't come out. So like, you know what I'm saying? It's a very interesting process. I'm being transparent just to show if other artists haven't really dealt with this as much. Like, it's a thing, man. It's a whole ordeal, and then it can really like fuck your plans up, even if you did everything right. And I've never had a problem before, like.
Well, if anybody is watching this live or close to live, before it hits Spotify, you can hear, I think, 2 or 3 different singles from Relentless's Deluxe edition over on Attic, mixcloud.com/dubious. I played Larry Flint on I think it's episode 33, the most recent one. But yeah, dope album all the way, start to finish. Highly recommend people check that out. So another thing that I do this show for, though, is to try to get guys to give shout outs to people on the scene, other people who they know, who they think, are making good music, and who fans should be paying attention to, or who other artists should be paying attention to work with. Because that's another thing, is like, when we're booking tours, it's nice if you know artists in other cities who are actually making music similar to yours, and you can connect and have openers that make sense, and maybe some promotion on the ground floor with people there in town. So I want to ask you about the Toronto hip-hop scene. Maybe just kind of your general impression of what the scene is like in Toronto right now, and if there's some artists you want to shout out, feel free to name drop some people.
For sure. So I only moved back. I was in Montreal for 10 years. I moved. It's a city called Hamilton. It's about an hour from Toronto, so it's around the corner. But I went back and forth a lot throughout the last decade to Toronto. So we were doing a lot of shows in both provinces. If
you want to speak on Montreal, that works too. I haven't talked to anybody from Montreal, so yeah, either or, both, whatever you want to do. Yeah.
Okay, sick. So the interesting thing about the scene, so we stopped doing live shows proactively around 2015, 2016, because it wasn't doing anything, and it wasn't moving the needle. We would rather concentrate on putting time, energy, and money into videos and making new music and stuff like that, right? I feel like we get more traction that way. Yeah. So I found that the scenes are very siloed. So like because I wasn't from Montreal, I would sort of be like hop around and I would sort of like meet people. Like, oh, you know these guys? I'm like, no, I don't know. I'm like, oh, okay. And do the same thing, and no one seemed to know anybody. The French guys are all over there.
Yeah.
Even the English guys are all down from the area or maybe like in the kind of genre. So no one seemed to know anybody, and I didn't feel like there was much of a cohesive scene in Montreal. As far as Toronto, it was definitely more sort of connected. And this would have been probably around that same time, 2013 through 2016, 2017. A lot of people were doing shows and working together and all that type of stuff. I kind of find now that everyone's like, it's probably changed a lot, to be fair, because we haven't been doing shows like that. I think that everything is completely shifted, and I feel like there's a whole new breed of artists now, and like the whole new generation, I guess, is probably more what I mean.
Yeah.
And I imagine there's not as many like us doing what would you consider it all? We all do, including you, like boom bap mostly. I imagine.
Yeah. Boom bap's where my roots are for sure. Even with what I play on Atzik, a lot of it is boom bap rooted, or the way I describe it now is lyrical hip hop. That's the tag I like to put on the hip hop that I like, is because there are guys who can rap on a trap beat and they say some shit that I'm like, oh snap, I hadn't heard it worded that way before, you know. So as long as I can tell that the lyricist who's rapping, if I can tell their voice apart from everybody else, that's one thing. And if they have anything to say at all, that's another thing. And then just kind of like interesting word plays or whatever, right? Like wordplay, metaphor, all that type of stuff. So that's how I rate music, man. And a lot of that is boom bap roots for sure. Yeah, but
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, sick. So that would almost be how we differentiate the scene. At least when we were sort of super active, like physically, like performing and stuff, it was like you go to nights and there'd be all the trap dudes performing, and then you'd have another night boom bap. Like it wasn't much of a crossover. So I probably am the best person to speak to. Like these guys are the hottest up and coming. I started realizing that the more people I worked with, everyone's sort of like unreliable. There was no like loyalty to you, so they'll say something and they wouldn't do it or whatever it might be. So I started to keep the circle pretty small, and I found that like it's much more efficient, and I feel like I just enjoy the process a lot more. Not that I'm not open to connecting with people. I've found that that's just what we've done over the past few years. So as far as people to recommend, the dude who produced Relentless, his name is Maya Clarity. I imagine you know him too, yeah?
Hell yeah. We talked a little bit online. Yeah.
Beautiful. So Maya's I think he's like an actual like musical genius. Like he's actually sort of like one of those sort of like freakily talented kids who, I'm gonna say kid, he's like 30 now, I guess. But
does that dude run a studio?
Yes,
see
he
on
does.
His social. Okay, yeah.
Him and Fresh Kills have a studio. I can't remember where it is. It's downtown Toronto. He sort of moved a bunch and they ended up collaborating on a space, which is great.
I didn't realize he was partnered up with Fresh Kills. That's super dope. Yeah.
Which is sick. I think his Kills moved his shit out of his house or whatever, his apartment, and then they got their own little space. And I think they might have even had a different place before this one, but anyway, they've got one that's available to rent out, so people in Toronto need a studio space.
Nice.
That would be a spot to go. So Maya is a producer, rapper, songwriter. He is like his beats, like the way we did that album, Relentless was the first album I did with no samples. So normally I'm all about samples, don't have a problem with them, love them, but it got annoying to have opportunities for any sort of sync or any placements or anything, and you can't do shit with most of the music.
They're a little bit limiting, yeah.
A lot bit limited, yeah. I unintentionally burned some bridges with some people because I didn't know that songs that I submitted had sampled. So they wanted one song in particular for a TV show, and I found out afterwards that it was sampled, and they were not happy with me at all. Understandably so, which is a big shame. So that kind of scarred me a bit. So I've been trying to move away from samples, period. But Maya played everything, basically everything you hear, he played it unless we brought in a musician. Wow. So him putting that together, watching the way he sort of managed we had a cello, violin, saxophone, guest singers, guitarist, drums, like all that shit, and the way he sort of handled the, in studio and talking them through what he wanted. I was like, man, this kid is like, and he's like damn near 10 years like younger than me and shit. Like I was like, this kid is special. And he's a very technical MC, and on Relentless is the first time I ever let anyone touch my rhymes. I've never ever done that before, but I let him tweak some bars, and I was okay with that because it was a real collaborative thing.
Yeah.
I wrote everything, and then he would be like, oh, why don't we say this instead? And I'd push back sometimes, and then blah, 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 we go back and forth.
Yeah.
I don't know if I do that again because I just prefer to do my thing, but I was like, you know what? just lean
I mean,
into
when
the
it's
process.
when it's a bar here and there, I'm never insulted if a guy who I'm in studio with, suggests like, why don't you
Suggest
just
something.
drop that syllable or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Like sometimes it's
exactly.
just easy stuff that you kind of get in your own head when you're standing in the booth trying to say the bar over and over, and sometimes it takes that nudge from somebody to be like,
Hey, why don't you try this?
why don't you do
Yeah.
it slightly different? Yeah.
And that was okay. I was cool with that, and I think it resulted in a better product. And the thing was, I had my girlfriend with me the whole time, and Notion there the whole time, and some other people, so that we could have some sort of a consensus. And they never were like, "Nah, man, fuck that." Like, it was pretty. They were like, "Yeah, that's better." I'm like,
Yeah.
sweet, not offended. Let's go. Because I was like, I'm not married to what I've done. Let's just get it done. So I guess there's a long-winded way of saying he's a really dope person to collaborate with as a feature artist. If people want to work with him, he has a studio and he has custom beats. Now he's not cheap at this point because everything is played and everything is custom. I don't think he just
Sure.
has beats that he sells. Like, he'll make you something.
I will say that he had a couple singles over the past year that were on big stolen samples that I was like, how is this guy allowed to be releasing this right now? But I guess that's a question for if I get a chance to talk to him. But
I'm pretty sure you just put it out, just like everything I've ever put out. Like, we could
I
get.
guess another way around samples, though, if he plays instruments like you just told me, it just clicked in my mind. He probably just
Interpolation?
replayed the shit, and yeah, it's an interpolation rather than a sample.
Yeah, so it's less trouble. You still have to clear it, I believe, or do
Okay.
something with it, or at least give this some sort of process with that. But it's significantly less hassle and headache than a sample. It's
Yeah.
always, I think, all of us are always like, well, if we ever get big enough or you get busted, then it's okay because the
That's-
amount of money you'd have to give up.
Yeah.
You know, it would
If
warrant.
you're big
the-
enough to get sued, you're big enough not to worry too much about it because you can make that money back.
And that's really what exactly right. And you've got the platform now, so it's all worth it type shit.
Yeah.
So I think definitely for him, on another tip, and this is obviously pretty biased, but my brother Notion is obviously an exceptional MC, but his beats are super fire and he's back on beat mode. And also, most importantly, he's mixing and mastering. And Maya goes to Notion for a lot of his mixing and mastering as well.
I did want to ask you about Notion. Earlier, I was trying to think,
Yeah.
like, can I think of any sibling combos in hip hop? Is that a thing? Like, Run DMC? I don't know. Who are
Were
there?
they related? I don't know if they were related. Though.
I don't know. I'm honestly not sure.
There has to be. We can't be like. There absolutely has to be for sure. I'm just trying to even think.
I
of
mean,
like,
Doom was in a group with his brother before he was MF Doom and before his brother passed. I know.
yes,
So that was
Skepta and JME in the UK, they're brothers.
Okay.
But they're not. They weren't in a group together because you're asking a group.
But it's few and far between, right? I mean,
Yeah, man, super, and it's
so
it's not
that's pretty
super
cool
common.
that you're actually working with your brother. What's it like working with a guy, making songs with a guy you grew up with? Like, is there? I didn't realize he rapped either until this conversation, but like,
Oh right. Oh yeah. No, he's dope, man. Like his last album, he's not very prolific.
okay,
He's more with the beats and the engineering, but his last album was 2017 called Heart on My Sleeve. Super fire. I fucking love that album.
nice.
It's great working with him because we had this understanding. Like we discovered hip hop together as I would have been 11 or 12, and he would have been a couple years younger.
Yeah.
So we went through the journey together of falling in love with his music, learning the words to the same songs and like getting passionate about the same thing, going to the shows. We went through the scene together. We always performed together. I've always been in groups until I moved to Canada. And what happened in Cross the Line is partially dramatized, but it's partially true.
Sure.
Like I brought the person who was in the group with, and then they left.
Yeah.
And I thought we committed to staying to this together. So like, I only went solo then, but we always used to perform together. We performed as the Movement Fan with me, Notion, the singer, and my other friend who was part of the crew as well. So it'd be the four of us. We had a drummer and shit, and it was a cool little
I
thing.
gather that person's no longer making music. The way that verse kind of talks about how.
No, she's not. No, it was my
Okay.
ex, and that was why it was kind of awkward even after we
Okay.
broke up.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
I still talk to her though. She's my friend. She's
Cool.
She's chill. Like she lives near my mom in Australia, still sees her, and she's got 2 kids in a family and doing her thing, and she's lovely. I'm happy as hell for her.
So,
But I thought, we'd already broken up, and she still moved over, and then her partner, who was her future husband, he came over too, and she just like didn't really try, and I was pretty mad at her for leaving because I was like, you betrayed everything that we agreed to do over here. We were like, we're not leaving until we get to where we want to go. And then
so
they
that
fucked
really
up.
was like the push to come across was like, let's go do music in North
Oh,
America?
we got a deal. We had a distribution deal, not through an actual label. Like we signed a contract with a label in Miami called Hypnot Records. I don't know if you remember. Actually, you are once again a great person to talk to about this because you probably might remember. There was a blog called KevinNottingham.com in the mid 2000s.
That rings a bell. Yeah.
It was one of like the top, I think traffic-wise, like top 5 up there with Now Right, you know.
Yeah. I remember Now Right days. Yeah, I was more on Now Right more often, but yeah.
He was the one that had a ton of traffic, but was much more supportive of the more indie artists. Whereas like Now Right and them had like the Mickey Fax and all the
Sean
people
P every week.
Exactly, which you know, rest in peace to one of the goats. But so Kevin started a label. And he was always posting our stuff, and we were talking. He was like, "Yo, I want to sign you guys." I'm like, "Oh shit, okay." And it was a distribution deal. He had a sub deal through this label called Coal Mine, who were a small indie label, I guess, and he got a distro deal through them. And I'm like, "Well, this is the sign we've been waiting for." All of our traction came from North America. I'd already lived in Toronto in 2004 with the ex. I ended up being in a group with her family lived in Toronto, so we lived there for like 7 months. Like straight after I finished university, and then traveled and whatever, and I fell in love with Canada, and I wanted to come back ever since. And so Kevin signed us, and that's why we were like, all right, fuck it. Well, I know Toronto. I've got people there. I know how the city works. We could all, and I know how to get the visa, so we can get the visa, and we can all just move to Canada and then be based there. Then we can go wherever we want, because going to South by Southwest from Australia is a whole ordeal and a lot of money. But going to South by from Toronto is not that serious. Or going to CMJ in New York when it was on. You know, it was pretty easy, which is what we did to begin with. We went to all the festivals and blah, blah, blah. Nice. So that's how it started. So only me and Notion, it was 4 of us. There was my ex's best friend who she kind of like was our support. She kind of just did all the stuff that we needed, like helped us at shows, got our merch done, all that type of stuff. So she left first, and then my ex left, and then the group sort of, then I went solo.
Sure.
Which was probably the best thing that could have happened, because I felt like I made better music. So working with Notion then in that context, we'd been working even while I was in the group. He'd been mixing all that stuff and producing. He wasn't producing as much back then, but his shit got really fire like recently. So it's always just easy. I always felt it easy, and he just understands, and we like the same stuff, and I've never heard him spit a whack rhyme. We agree on the topic matter. Yeah. We could both speak to the thing because we've both been through the struggle. He expresses things completely different than I do, which Notion was on Relentless. He's on a couple of songs. You would have heard on I Got Next, which is the trappy one.
Yeah, okay,
And he's on a song called Too Hungover. You
know, I probably saw that it featured Notion and then just didn't click that I was even listening to 2 different Australian guys rapping. You know?
The voice is pretty similar when you hear it, so I can understand if you don't sort of tell, but it's cool, man. I'm definitely blessed that it worked out that way.
Dude, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but since you are a unique guest in that you've lived in another country and can talk about that scene a little bit, like you mentioned that you had homies there and they're still making music. Do you want to name drop any of those guys? Talk about what hip hop in Australia was like, because honestly, like beyond, you know, Hilltop Hoods or like, that's pretty much all I can think of. Yeah, Bliss and SO, sure. Yeah.
Do you know 360?
No, that doesn't ring a bell. I know that there's a guy named Complete who's got an album coming out with an Edmonton-based MC named Kripel, who, I've heard a couple of songs. That dude. Yeah, I've heard some songs from them, so I'm looking forward to that album coming out. But Complete is based in Australia. I'm not sure which city, but so I know that there is a scene out there, and I see artists working with Sealance too, the producer Sealance. He sells beats to a lot of guys in Australia that pop up every week for me to listen to. So, who do you know out there? What's the scene in Melbourne like?
Yes, so from what I think it's changed a lot. I think it's just like it has, say, even in Toronto from then. I've been gone 12 years now, so a lot has probably changed even more so.
Sure.
But I still see a lot of homies do stuff. One of my good friends, Luke Vex, who we all came up together, he's still putting out music. Great stuff. He's really prolific right now. My other friend GMC, he's always doing great stuff. So Vex is doing kind of more straight up boom bap, kind of more like us, whereas GMC is doing real like auto tune, big clubby type of stuff, because he can kind of sing as well. So he kind of does a bit of that, and he's very dope technical MC. I've known him since he very, very first came out.
Nice.
So he's super dope. 360 was my friend I was talking about earlier, who's like the multi-platinum dude. He was massive, massive. And he sort of had he's been up and I think he's about to come out with some new shit soon as well. He's just, everyone in Australia would already know him. Who else is doing some great stuff? This other dude, Lee Monroe in Sydney. He's doing some really good shit as well. He's sort of my like era, and he used to go by a different name, and now he's sort of doing some stuff. So he think he's doing pretty well. He's doing great with the content too. He's doing all of the trending stuff and the little skits and all this shit online and staying pretty active. But it's pretty dope out there. Like I haven't really worked with dudes out there. Once again, we're just sort of keeping it all pretty hyper local or connected with Smokewell. We do the project and just feature Notion type shit. Like if he's friends, cool, we'll feature them. But yeah, man. Oh, and then also Jonathan Emile. Shit, I should shout him out. So he's in Montreal. He was the dude I mentioned earlier. So he's an MC, a singer, and he does reggae. So right now he's sort of in the reggae phase, which I think is brilliant. He did the album through Tough Gong, and he's still pushing that. He got like a live version. He's been dropping a lot of singles and dropping that album as like a single. So he's always killing stuff. His music is phenomenal. We went to Jamaica with him in 2019 and filmed all the videos for that. Did it well. So yeah, man, there's a lot of good artists. I probably need, even sort of having this conversation makes me realize maybe I do need to connect with some more folks because I'm in my bubble.
Good. That's what I'm here for, man. I'm here to encourage you artists to do that because there's so many dope artists. And even like, you know, you talk about like, oh, we're on this boom bap tip. There are a lot of dope boom bap artists across Canada, man. You know, production wise, different guys to get for features, any of it. And I think your music is right at home with a lot of those guys, a lot of the guys that I play on AtSick.
Okay.
Yeah, so you know, tap into AtSick. I appreciate you coming through though, man, and coming through to spread some spotlight to some other people and to the scene in Toronto, and you know, all the best wishes for the release of Relentless Deluxe Edition. People should look for that.
Yes, sir.
As well as go back and, you know, check out your past catalog. It's all up on Spotify. Check out Notion stuff. And yeah, shouts to the movement, fam.
Appreciate you, bro. Thank you for having me, man. Great to connect. This is a fun convo. It's cool to talk about this stuff with someone who's been doing it so long, because like there's certain nuances that maybe not everyone gets. So much love.
You know, there's hip hop media in Canada. It's like there's only CBC kind of interviewing guys here and there. There's not a whole lot of interviews happening, so I just looked at it and was like, you know what, let's try to talk to people. So I always appreciate when you guys come through, talk to me, and yeah, lots of love, man. I'll keep playing your stuff.
Likewise.
On AtSick.
Appreciate you, my bro.
I'm gonna end the stream. Peace.